Public Safety for appropriations. We're going to start with a review of the fiscal year 15 general budget. We've got a number of agencies that we want to hear from. Before we get started, Senator Williams, do you mind opening us with a word of prayer? Sure. Appreciate that.
Father, we thank you for our law enforcement officers and all those who protect us. Our mission is to protect the people out there first, and we thank you for all those who are willing to risk their lives out there in that duty. We ask your blessings on the work we do here today. Give us the wisdom to make the right decision in Christ's name. Amen.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Mr. Keenan.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, what I would like to do is to highlight three programs that have come out of. One of them was the governor's recommendation. The other two were enhancements from the House, and to outline those, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay. So for the last 3 years, the number one priority in the Georgia Bureau of Investigation has been to get pay parity for the agents and scientists in the agency. And for the past 2 years, the Senate as well as the House has supported the pay increases for the agents and scientists, and we're back again for the third year to do the final steps of the pay raises for agents. This is in the House budget. It is $3.76 million.
Tell us where you at, page 9, right?
This is page...
This is page 9 for us. I don't know about for you.
Page 11.
Page 11.
Okay. And the 3.76 encompasses both the investigative division and the scientist. This is we've had great strides since the legislature has been funding the pay increases for the career ladders for agents and scientists. Give an example, our turnover rates for agents has reduced very well. We no longer have agents that are leaving us to go to work for local agencies. They're staying with the agency. And in the crime laboratory, we have, because of the pay enhancements, we have stopped the turnover rate in the crime laboratory, and what that is equated to is that the backlog in the crime laboratory is now over 40% than what it was before the increases kicked in. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation has the finest criminal investigators in the United States, and we got many of them here in the room that are with the Fraternal Order of Police, have come up here this gives me an opportunity to publicly recognize them for the excellent work that they do, putting their lives on the line every day.
Why are they all sitting in the back? I mean, y'all can come up. Y'all welcome to come up.
It's a GBI thing, sir.
It's a GBI thing? I mean, I thought it was an NSA thing. I didn't know. I thought maybe.
I thought they came from the Baptist church.
They're getting ready, sir, to return to duty at a moment's notice if there was something happens that calls their attention. But it is a great success story that men and women in the GBI that are staying with the agency. And one thing I'd like to point out, Mr. Chairman, is that this pay parity program did not increase the starting salary for agents of scientists. See, sir, our problem has never been recruiting the finest to come to work for the agency. The problem has been keeping them working in the agency after we have trained them. And as we pointed out when we put together this plan and submitted it to the legislature 2 years ago, the program will pay for itself in the training costs that we will no longer incur. So thank you. And I solicit your support from the Senate to support the House recommendation to continue the third year of the pay parity.
And that's 209.4, right?
Sir?
209.4. It's on top of page 12 for committee members.
Okay. And then we have the other pay parity also goes for the scientist.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So your favorable consideration of that would be greatly appreciated. The other area that I would point out is that in the governor's recommendation, he had put in at our request an additional medical examiner and a medical examiner investigator, and that was $263,641. And what page is it?
It's page 10, 209.3.
Page 10, 209.3. The GBI currently has a chief medical examiner and 13 board-certified forensic pathologists. We do autopsies for 151 of the 159 counties. We do over 3,000 autopsies a year with an additional 1,500 postmortem examinations. We are now maxed out in our ability to do autopsies. With the increase in the state population, that workload is continuing to increase, of course, and we need the additional pathologists and the medical examiner to keep up with the workload of what's coming into the agency. And this will do that for us. And the House supported the governor's recommendation, and I solicit the Senate's support for doing that also. The third program is something that was not in the governor's budget, was the secondary metal recycler database, and that is page 9208.3. And with the passage of House Bill 872 in 2012, this called for the creation of a metal recyclers database, that the metal recyclers would submit information on of metal that they have purchased from persons going into a database which would be accessible for law enforcement. After that bill was passed, we started doing research into the area and what would be required to set up the database. The bill, when it was enacted, said it would, upon available funding. We did two things. We looked at internally what it would cost if the GBI were to be the one to develop the database and to implement that database, and that was going to cause the GBI to need $150,000 in reoccurring costs, but also nearly $350,000 to develop this. That's the internally. We also put out a request for information to the industry to see what is available commercially to have a database managed, developed and managed by private industry. And the responses we got back was there was already a database that was in existence. That was going to be a reoccurring cost of $150,000. There's another interest from a company which was going to require around $500,000 to develop the database. Now, the House budget put in $150,000, which is what our realistic assessment of what it would cost for private industry to manage the database. That is so that's where we're at. The House put that in, and if the Senate does likewise, then the GBI will go forward with a statewide contract, because it has to be bid out to see what to go from there. But our best assessment is $150,000 to set up the database to do this. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I can answer any questions.
Okay, I've got a couple for you. I'm going to start out with the third installment of the career ladder, which is 209.4. And committee members, you'll find that on top of page 12. First of all, let me state publicly that I'm in favor of this, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure it stays in there. This is a commitment we made, a commitment we should keep, and it's a good commitment as well, because parity is very important, particularly for these fine people who do such an excellent job for us. But I have to wonder, every year it's gone up and up and up. Can you explain to me why that's happened?
Yes, sir. If we did it, the cost was too high, as we were told, to do it all at one time. So we've done it incrementally. as each year passes by, we have agents and scientists who have advanced in their tenure with the agency. They have advanced in their more training. They've had more achievements within their career. There have also been promotions, and so the life of the agency continues on, and it is there's been an increase in that. And it also there's been we've had increases in the amount of contributions to the employees' retirement system, and these were not included in the original calculations, but last year it was a 3.5% increase in FY14 and a 3.5% increase in FY15. So all that's calculated into the pay increases.
Okay. Are there any positions that have reached pay parity? Are
No.
they?
No.
Okay.
No, this will bring it up to the pay parity. And we're talking about, when in the pay parity what we're talking about is 226 agents and 156 scientists. That is that's the population that is included in this. It's not any other employees in the agency. I'll point out that under this pay parity program, an agent with 15 years experience would make $64,000, which is still very much a bargain for the state of Georgia for someone who's attained the expertise and the amount of training that GBI agents have. Scientists are a little bit higher, but they're in a continuous training mode that's necessitated by today's law enforcement. But this third year will put us where we will be proud to be at. And I won't come back next year.
Okay. Now, when you were talking about the vendor for the metal theft database, you have gotten a price? You've put out an RFP, or?
Well, we put out a request for information to see what is available in the industry, and we had two responses. One, which was a company with an established program that they're doing this business in two other states, and a third company, which was their proposal was to develop it and then a reoccurring cost. So what the state contract, we'll go through a contract process, and whoever wins the contract or who we'll do business with. But our best assessment is $150,000.
Okay. And you're comfortable with that?
I am.
Okay. Okay, committee members, any questions? Okay, Senator C.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm about to call you by your name, I'm sorry. Your department, with modern technology and modern sciences, are you all able to keep up with what's current globally?
We do very well with that, in that we have our Georgia Crime Information Center, which is the technology division of the GBI, and we're able to, they're masters at employing technology, which is the reason why that we've been able to increase their workload while their number of employees decreased. We in the agents are masters at employing proper technology in investigations. So the answer is I'm very proud of where the agency is at in using technology.
Okay, any other questions of committee members? Yes, sir. Senator Williams.
Did I understand you to say y'all did 3,000 autopsies?
Yes, sir. 3,000 autopsies and another 1,500 post-mortem exams, which are not the full autopsies. And we do autopsies at GBI headquarters, Macon, and Savannah.
That's like 20 a day.
Yes, sir. It is not unusual for the staff in GBI headquarters to come in and have 25 to 30 bodies to be autopsied.
How are those referred to you?
Local agencies. The coroners are responsible for transporting the bodies up to us, either one of the three locations. And the law mandates what bodies are to be autopsied.
So that's in the code?
Sir? Yes,
That's
sir.
in the law?
Yes, sir. It's in the law mandating what bodies are to be that must be referred to the GBI for autopsy.
Okay.
If you come visit me, sir,
Thank
you'll
you.
see hearse coming across our parking lot to the back of our building.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, sir.
What do you charge the local government to do that autopsy?
No, sir. The state of Georgia covers all the costs for the autopsy. The local agency, the local government is responsible for transporting those bodies to us for autopsy. At one time, the state incurred that cost also, but several years ago, the program was changed and now they transport.
Has there been any discussion ever about the locals covering some of that cost?
Only when the legislature brings it up. It cost us about $1,500 an autopsy. The way I view this is that the public monies are going to pay for an autopsy. There's certain things going to pay for this service. There's certain things that can be best delivered at the state level, and this is one of them. So,
I suppose if they paid for it, they could consider a way to have it done as well.
well, yes, sir. The problem with autopsies is that there's a very small group of doctors that do this type work. Most local doctors will not get involved in an autopsy in any form or fashion. That would require them to have to come to court and testify. They have to find a place to do the autopsies. Hospitals do not want a decomposing body in their facility. So the state does this. Our agency is one of the largest in the country that does autopsies on a statewide basis. Many times the autopsies are done, in the case of Metro Atlanta, they're done, at the county level. Others will have a regional system that's not, the state has no part of. Georgia's system has always been the state will handle the 151 of the counties.
So your agents would also, whoever does the autopsy also may have to show up for court to.
Oh yes, sir. They're constantly in court. They're experts at what they do.
Okay.
Are those the only people who do autopsies? I mean, do some doctors do autopsy? If I have a family member who dies and I want to know what happened to them, I just have to request an autopsy be done and the state pays for it?
No.
Okay.
The only thing we do, only autopsies we do are those that are mandated by law to be done. Someone who dies unattended by a physician under suspicious or unusual circumstances, or a child that's under the age, I think it's 12. Those other family member wants an autopsy done, they'd have to find their own doctor and pay for that.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Senator Miller.
Senator from 19th had my question regarding the funding and if there's any responsibility from local government, and that seems like something we should be addressing at some point. Rob Peter to pay Paul, he's always happy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I always do what the legislature directs me to do, sir.
Okay, Senators, any other questions, Senators? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ron. Okay, Department of Defense. What page?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate the time this afternoon. On behalf of, first of all, my name is Russell Carlson. I serve as General Jim Butterworth's deputy at the Georgia Department of Defense. And on behalf of the Adjutant General, Jim Butterworth, I want to express his apologies for not being here today. He's actually attending an exercise in Savannah that has international and nationwide participants in an air exercise that I think will hopefully be a good economic impact boost for the 1st District down there in the whole coastal area. But if I may, I'll, you know, I think as you reflect on the governor's recommendation, I think you'll see a lot of familiar items that have shown up in DoD budgets in the past. As you know, despite the fact that we are a robust $700+ million organization responding to the needs of Georgia and the national military, we represent a approximately $9 million line item here at the state due to our strong federal presence. When you factor in the master cooperative agreement, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, and the pass-through federal funds, your state employees in the financial management division of Georgia DoD are at any given day executing north of $90 million with a lot of state employees funded by federal dollars and whatnot. As far as the breakdown of the state budget, again, I think it's something you're all familiar of. Roughly a third of that $9 million goes to our 2 Youth Challenge Academies, which I cannot be more pleased with their progress, and despite their 21 years of success at Fort Stewart and Fort Gordon, I still believe their greatest years are ahead of them. We're constantly making adjustments to that program, and hope that the federal commitment, as of right now, it's roughly a 70-30 split between the feds and the state, which for a long time it was a 75-20 split. That's something we're tackling, and we're going to see how the federal government responds to that over time. But we're convinced that the best days of Youth Challenge are ahead of it, and we're proud to say that we celebrated our 12,000th graduate recently. Also, I'd like to point out, in light of the recent storms, if you look at the Financial Management Division and the State Personnel Office at our budgets, and also the State Defense Force, that combined doesn't amount to $1 million in our state budget. But those individuals help process all of the state active duty, all of the men and women who left their civilian jobs, and we thank their employers for that, and went on state active duty to serve in both of these recent storms. All of that work was done by relatively small offices in our Financial Management Division and State Personnel Office, and a lot of nights at the office and a lot of weekend duties to get these men and women paid and processed in a timely manner, and credit on their military record for that service here stateside. If you look for changes between the governor's recommendation and the House, you'll see one, and it's an issue that I know this committee is familiar with, and it's the issue of a state council in the Georgia Department of Defense. It was a concept initially presented in the governor's recommendation. It has been before this committee, and I stand ready to answer any questions on that. I owe it to the committee to do that. But I firmly believe, and I want to state again something that I've mentioned in other venues, I believe it's a sound policy decision. I believe it's a responsible policy decision, because ultimately it's intended to protect the assets of the state in such a federally robust program. It's been a worthwhile investment, a great individual that is part of the leadership team, the Georgia DoD, and I believe we're delivering to you a better agency because of it. But I stand before the committee subject to any questions that you may have.
Okay. Let's just go right into it.
Yes, sir.
And first of all, let me thank you, Russell, and the Adjutant General for meeting with me. And
Yes, sir.
I know that we've had a little bit of I've had a concern about 110.4.
Yes, sir.
But let me state that this is when it ought to come.
Yes, sir.
You know, in the big budget, and not in the fiscal year amended budget, and that's where I don't have any, from the get-go. I want to make it clear that I've not had any problem with the position or the person especially, but just the process, and I just want to make sure that we understand. I'm all in favor of it. I understand the need for it. You explained that to me, but you know, when we have something come up in the amended budget mid-year that hasn't been discussed for the big budget, then that's the process is what concerns me. So,
Yes.
And again, let me tell you how much I appreciate you and General Butterworth for your explaining that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee members? Comment? Absolutely.
I don't have a question, just have a comment regarding the last few weeks and the role that the Guard played in the safety and security of our state and getting things back in working order, and the thousands of men and women and the millions of dollars of assets that were put on the roads in the state of Georgia would not have been possible without the Guard. And I just want to thank you for the service y'all are providing.
Yes, sir. We thank you for that comment, Senator, and we appreciate the governor giving our guys the opportunity to serve in that capacity. It meant a lot to them as individuals, anecdote upon anecdote of how much it meant to them after years serving overseas to perform like this in Georgia, to names and faces and communities that they recognize and know people in it. It had quite an impact emotionally and as far as a morale standpoint on our organization. It really did. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Russell.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Prosecuting Attorney's Council. Committee members, this is going to be page 1, and I'm going to get back on schedule. I apologize. I had the wrong schedule on there. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could get started, I'm Chuck Spahas. I'm the Director of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council. Mark Williams, our CFO, is handing out the presentation I'm going to work off of. I've also got David Miller, the DA from South Georgia, and also the DA Denise Ficini from Cordele that's with us that will assist at one point in this thing. And also I have an assistant DA that's an accountability court prosecutor that I may say a few words if I could. I start out by reminding the members of the mission of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council, and that is to support the prosecuting attorneys throughout this state in their efforts against criminal activity in Georgia. I want to briefly talk about accountability courts, a few operational challenges, and explain our FY15 budget request. Your version of it, of course, is on page 27 through 29 if you're not already there. The first slide shows you a growth of accountability courts in Georgia since 1997. Specifically, there's been 47 new accountability courts created in Georgia just since 2009, and this is as of 9/1/2013. We're aware of several that have been done since then. I remind y'all, in budget year 2014, as part of the governor's package, we originally requested, as part of the Justice Reinvestment Act, to support the accountability court concepts in this state. It was 25 assistant DAs, which would have been one for half of the circuits in this state. Through appropriations, ultimately was funded 12 positions. The agency went through a process that Denise Ficini is going to tell you about briefly, is how we implemented those, because they are on the ground and operating today. Denise?
We had two committees within the district attorneys and prosecutors council, personnel committee, as well as accountability board committee, get together and come up with some criteria for
It should be. Let's see. Go ahead.
in order to come up with a systematic approach of determining where to place these positions for the accountability courts. What we looked at was the presence of existing accountability courts within the circuits, and we had 26 applications, 26 separate circuits that made applications for these positions, and in order to be selected to put themselves in
That's correct.
12 positions that we selected, and it was a blind application process to a degree. But we ended up with accountability courts, and if you'll take a look at the slide that includes the map, I'm not sure what page that's on.
Right there. It's the next slide.
But implementation of accountability courts, ADAs, and see a map of the state of Georgia, you can see that we ended up with a pretty good coverage of the state in terms of getting these accountability courts in position, but you can see that there's a huge gap in where we still need to place positions themselves. But we managed to cover metro areas, rural, a couple of rural areas, and some mid-population areas with the selection, just using those 12 positions that we had.
If I could, on the next slide, one of the things that we were able to extract from the data that came from the 26 applications is kind of a snapshot of what impact the accountability courts are actually having on the district attorney's office of the state. And an average number of what the applicants applied for showed us that they were already spending almost 21 hours per week of an assistant DA's time managing, prepping these courts. So at this point in time, we've got at least half an assistant DA per week assigned to these courts, and also trying to take care of the other duties that assistant is assigned to. What I've got here today is Grady Moore. He's an assistant DA out of Cobb County. He's going to quickly tell you what took place in Cobb County when his position went from part-time to full-time in 2000, if you would, Grady, 2013.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm a senior assistant district attorney with Cobb Circuit. We've had our drug court in place since 2002, I believe that's in 2004, I took over the oversight of it. From that point until the end of 2012, I was splitting my time between the drug court and a regular felony caseload, which is the model that a lot of circuits are having to use. In January 2013, I was able to move full-time into the accountability court oversight. What I've been able to do since then, we've compiled some statistics from 2003, fiscal year 2003 through the end of 2012. We were handling about 97 assessments for drug court per year. It works out about 8 a month. In calendar year 2013, we assessed 193 individuals for the program, about 16 a month, and I did 16 in January of 2014, so we effectively doubled the number of people that we can assess for that particular program. In addition to drug court, in April of 2013, we were able to open our doors on a mental health court, which we have up and running with Judge Mary Staley, and we're well into the implementation phase of the Veterans Treatment Court, which we're very excited about. We've compiled some numbers that show that there's a need for that in our circuit. The other thing I've been able to do is take our pretrial conversion program and expand that to where I'm using it much like an accountability court. Before, when we didn't have a full-time person, we were having to operate that with a part-time non-attorney. We didn't do drug testing, we didn't do risk needs analysis, we didn't have any coordination between our accountability courts and that program. Now what I'm able to do, since I have my hands in all these cookie jars, is to place individuals in the correct program. I've got the freedom to be able to move them around. If someone applies for drug court, we find that they're most suitable for pretrial conversion, I'm able to assess for both programs, which is a freedom we never had before. And what it led to is a lot of people who might have ended up in drug court who didn't really need, who weren't high risk, high needs individuals who didn't really need that kind of treatment. Now we can place them in an appropriate program and we can keep them out of, first of all, incarceration, and secondly, in the regular superior court system, slowing down other more serious and dangerous cases.
As we move on to the next couple of slides, I just point this out to remind you that there have been state funds allocated through the grant process, through CJCC and other sources for accountability courts. One slide shows you approximately $4 million that went to positions or personnel funding for accountability courts. These are the individuals that are manning these courts on behalf of the courts and running those programs, but they do not include any revenue, source of income for funding assistant DAs or assistant public defenders. The second slide shows you just an analysis of the metro area, several of the counties that we were able to extract, and basically 69% of the funds that were flowing to accountability courts were being used for personnel within the courts to man these courts. The point of this is these courts are very labor intensive on behalf of the prosecutors, the public defenders, the courts, and all the personnel that support these courts. We still strongly support them. We just show that there's been some redirection of costs by taking these individuals out of the state system, out of the county system. David Miller wants to quickly tell you just a snapshot about the Colquitt County Accountability Court.
While Brandon's talked to you about one of the larger courts, I want you to understand the impact that even a small court can have. The Colquitt County Court, I've got 5 counties on the Florida border. We've got roughly 225,000 population last time I checked. The 9th largest felony caseload in the state of Georgia, even though I'm in 5 counties down in South Georgia. One of my judges stepped in Colquitt County, which is a population of about 42,000 people, and he volunteered to run a accountability court, which would be both the drug court and the mental health court in Colquitt County. We've got 14 participants in that. 2 of them dropped out. It just started last January. So what I want you to see here is that the person that was put in charge as the court coordinator, case manager, is paid $50,000 a year, and she is an attorney, was admitted in 2008. My assistant DA, who was assigned to that court, has 2 years more bar experience. She's got 8 years experience now as a prosecutor, and even with the half step that we've asked y'all to follow up on this year, her salary will just move to $49,750. So she will still be making, even with half step, less than the administrative program is. The administrator is dealing with 14 participants in the court. My assistant DA is also dealing with those 14 participants and carrying a full caseload of over 250 felony cases assigned to her during that calendar year, count the backlog from the previous years. So I looked on the Department of Corrections website at the cost of incarceration using FY11 figures. The Department of Corrections website says it costs about $50.50 a day to incarcerate people. With the 12 people that we kept out of prison in the smallest court in the state, that calculation came up to saving the state $223,000 plus in incarceration costs. And it seems to us that this is a very cost-effective means of dealing with this particular population that y'all have expressed concern about, us dealing with these people on the drug cases. So that's to show you what an impact even the smallest court can have, and also to make the pitch is to finally these half-step payments. They're grossly underpaid.
Okay.
The next slide shows you where we're actually at about the accountability courts. Remember again that you funded 12 last year. The governor's budget, our request and the proposal was for the additional 35 this year, which would have covered all of the circuits of the state, minus the 2 that I'll tell you that already have an extra assistant DA. What this next chart shows you is the bare minimum that we're asking you. The House did not include that in the budget, so we're here now asking you to consider putting an amount of money back in to cover accountability courts. This next chart is one that we proposed to you. You start at the top. There's 49 judicial circuits in this state. 12 were funded last year for assistant DA positions. There are currently 11 circuits that do not have an active accountability court as of yet. And there are 2 circuits that have accountability courts, or actually one that does, that already have an assistant DA extra because of the way their circuit was split at some point. So what we're telling you now is that 24 assistant DAs are required to cover the accountability courts currently active in the state. So instead of the $2.7 million that was originally in the budget, we're asking you to consider the $1.9 million that would cover 24. So it's $1,025,565. That's based on a base salary of $50,000 and $23 per year, plus the 60.39% fringe. The next couple of slides just go through what I just told you is about where we came from. The other thing that's in the budget, that the House left in the budget, I want to make you briefly aware of, is the operational challenges that we've had over the last several years with our assistant DAs in the state. As you know, we went through furlough process, we've gone through a hiring freeze process, and there was 5 years where there was no increase. Last year we came to you and asked for a step increase to retain our more experienced assistant DAs. You were gracious enough to supply enough money for us to do half of that. We've come back this year and asked for that other half, and the House has left that amount in there. I do show you on that chart that we've had a continued increase in the departure of our assistant DAs. Not that they are leaving state payroll, so they're not going between offices. They're leaving state payroll now, and that has almost doubled. We saw 11.36 turnover rate just in 2013, plus a significant increase in retirees that are leaving. The next slide just outlines that, and we ask you to continue to maintain what the House has proposed, which is that half-step increase. The travel budget is our final issue. In fiscal year 2007, we spent $958,000, almost $1 million on travel within the circuits and for training in the DA's office. That has been cut over the years down to $550,000. Last year, you were able to provide an extra $100,000, and we were moving in the right direction. One of the things that we've done is we've narrowed down exactly what the DAs in this state are spending their dollar on. We've tried to streamline that process, and the original request coming through this year was an indication of the actual requests that came from 38 of the 49 judicial circuits for an increase over what had been allocated to that. The House has appropriated $150,000 of the $369,000 request. We ask if you would consider to protect that amount and to leave that in there, and that we will continue to try to work and come up with ways to cover that in the interim between now and then. The other items in there include a risk premiums increase of $96,000. What has happened is there's been a change in the way risk premiums are applied to the state employees. In the past, it had been done by employee, i.e. however many you had, you paid that percentage of it. What happened in this last year is a change in that, and now it is applied to the base of your actual salaries paid to the individuals. So that we, for instance, because we employ mainly assistant DAs and what have you, our base salaries are higher than, for instance, Department of Corrections that has a lot of correctional officers at a lower pay scale. That is a significant shift to us. The House agreed and acknowledged that, and we ask you that you can continue to include that into the budget. The other items include the 2 judgeships that were added last year, proposed judgeships of this year, and the increase in employers' retirement. And the House included the 1% merit-based performance increase and the increase in the PeopleSoft billing. And I would yield and submit to any questions.
Okay. Let me ask you, and because I'm a big fan of accountability courts, have been. We've had them in Chatham County for many, many years. They've been successful, and I think they add a lot to our community down there. The House has given the reason that they didn't want to add the 35 additional assistant district attorneys as being that the public defenders, if we didn't add any to them, that could be a disadvantage to the defendants. How would you respond to that?
I would respond to that in 2 ways. First of all, you need to understand that, just as you heard from Assistant DA Moore, it's about facilitating the court's operation and making more defendants have access to it. So we are the gatekeepers to that system. The more individuals that have access to it, the more that can avail themselves of it, the more the state saves. We submit to you that at some point you're going to have to seriously consider an appropriation for public defenders in some shape, form, or fashion. But my understanding from my counterpart at the Public Defender's Office is they had some priority items this year in their budget, and that was not their priority. Their conflict cases and some other things have been their priority, and that's what they asked for in their appropriation, and that's what they got. But if I don't have an individual to administer it from a DA's point, we're not going to even get the individuals in there. So that's our position, is the assistant DAs are a necessary part for the courts to even function and much less grow.
That the Public Defender's Office would necessarily
Okay.
The public defender will have a limited role once that individual is in that program, as long as the individual is compliant with the program. It doesn't become a real issue about defense until the individual becomes non-compliant.
All right, let's shift gears for just a second and tell me, getting back to the DA's court travel that was decreased. How do you determine that? How do you come up with the number that you submit?
How did we come up with the amount of money we've asked for at this point? What we've done is we have asked each elected district attorney of this state to look at actual dollars expended for travel within their circuits, travel to and from any training or any other things associated with their work. And what had taken place in the past was, if a bill was submitted, it was paid, and I can't answer because it was before my day, but that was what happened. When we took a significant cut to it, we found ourselves having to make that dollar obviously spread over a much spinner thing. So we created a formula, and we took into account the size of the circuit, the number of counties in the circuit, a couple of other factors, and created that formula. Spread that $500,000 over the circuits that way. And then we asked the DAs to tell us and show us what, above and beyond what that formula does, you need to actually cover your court, because the DAs that are sitting here will tell you there's a much different need in a rural circuit like Mr. Miller's, obviously, you know, than Chatham County Circuit, which is a single county circuit.
Right.
So we have to rely on the district attorney to show us what it costs, because each circuit is different. Judges hold court at different times, different places, and they have to spread their resources. But we've made them document to us their actual expenditures.
Okay.
Chairman, we also have travel associated that's not involved with the Superior Court judge. For instance, when we have to travel from county to county for the child family review hearings, the child protocol hearings, that's travel that the DA2 circuit in particular is told us has become a real problem. They quit physically meeting and start having telephone meetings and reviewing the child deaths, which, you know, people have different ideas about whether or not that's a good thing to do. But those of us that can get the support of our counties, you know, we have supplemented our travel with local money. But that's a sensitive thing with the county commissions, because, you know, the statute says the child will travel just like the judge's travel.
Well. Okay, Senator Miller?
Following up with Senator Carter's question on travel, what does the travel expense actually include? Is that mileage? Is that gas? Is that hotel? What does that include?
It generally involves either mileage at the state rate or the use and the maintenance of a car, if there is one available in the DA's office, fuel, tires, maintenance, to and from the multi-county circuits and the various other things that are required of them. It also includes travel. One of my slides shows you we had a 45% increase in our training of our new assistant DAs, because we've had such a turnover. We're having to train our new assistant DAs, and they have to go through the basic requirements of being a young lawyer coming out of law school, then the basic fundamentals that we require of them, and then in that first year, basic litigation, which we've had almost doubled the number of people in our basic litigation course. So it's also travel to put them up, train them. We do that at Forsyth at the training center. So it does include that kind of thing.
Senator, if I could add, y'all don't fund any vehicles for the district attorneys in the
Right.
state. Like a lot of other offices, you don't buy any cars for us. The cars that we are able to get, we get them from the Lawmakers, whether it's our county or not county.
Oh, I can fix that.
In my case, my police department, when they rotate their vehicles out every 5 years, and they pick out 2 or 3 of their best, and let me have them for $1. And so then we can save state travel money, because all we have to do then is just put gas in the car. We're not paying an assistant DA that mileage, which is much
Right.
higher than
Oh, yeah.
putting gas in the car. So we do things like that to try to minimize our travel costs.
Okay. If I could
Okay.
ask one more.
Sure.
It's an unrelated question, but just real quickly. We talked about the districts for the accountability courts, and how are those drawn? Are those drawn population-wise? You were talking about the number of folks you had in Colquitt County that were, cases you were trying, I think, and or the murders or something early on. It was a disproportionately high number.
David did not get one of the accountability court positions. He and I were on the committee making the selection of what circuits would get it. And so neither one of us, we both took our
But these districts are drawn up by population or by cases?
The circuits.
The circuits.
It's the,
Circuits, I mean, the circuits though, that's what I'm asking. They're drawn up by population or by number of cases?
When you made the selection, we were looking at trying to put some in rural, some in mid-population areas, and some rural. And that's how it ended up being spread out.
Okay.
Around the state. Wanted to make sure that we were able to see just how well they worked in all the different parts of the state to the degree of number of positions that we have.
Okay.
well, I think if your question is how we come about the circuits themselves, the circuits have been created through history by legislation. So the only way they change at this point is for you as the legislature to split a circuit, create more judgeships, create a new district attorney, that kind of thing. So this is what we've come to historically to be known as the 49 circuits of Georgia. So if a circuit splits, of course, then we would have a 50.
That gets to my question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Okay, anything else? Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate it very much.
sir.
Thank y'all. Okay, let's move on. We need to get moving. Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. And this is going to be on page 13. I know. Page 13, and then we'll be just the next page from then on out. I'm sorry, I got out of sequence. Yes, ma'am.
Chairman, Jacqueline Bunn from the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. I'm prepared to go through our proposed budget and answer any questions if you have any. I can start with line 211.1 and 211.2. These are just statewide adjustments. 211.3 represents $279,000 in state funds, along with grant funds to support sexual assault and domestic violence funding, which is currently managed by GOSEF. That's going to be moved over to CJCC. I would just point out that CJCC already administers VOCA, VAWA, and SASP federal grants, which provide approximately $10 million in family violence-related funding each year. 211.4 reflects $260,545 transfer state funds and positions from GOSEF to CJCC, and that coincides with the transfer of the Federal Juvenile Accountability Block Grant and Title II Formula Grant. These grants are presently supporting the state-initiated Juvenile Justice Incentive Grant Program. 211.5 is the reinvestment of juvenile justice reform savings to incentivize the expansion of community-based programs to provide community-based alternatives to felony commitments and short-term placements. And I would just add that there are presently 21 local subgrantees being funded by the current $5 million incentive grant. And these funds would allow for an increase in the number of subgrantees. 211.6 and 211.7 are reinvestments of criminal justice reform savings into the accountability court grants. And the total for these two line items are just under $3.8 million. These increases are based on OPB's calculations of the cost to bring additional accountability courts online and expand their current capacity. 29.55 is $384,502 to support additional family-dependent drug courts. And for FY 2014, funding of this courts is $1.5 million. The next one is $3,372,186 in criminal justice reform savings to provide additional funds for felony drug and mental health courts. And for FY 2014, funding for these courts is $9,383,682. At line 211.8, this represents the transfer of a federally funded position and funding that supports prevention activities for the commercial sexual exploitation, and that's coming from GOSEF. There are no state funds attached to this amount. This funding supports Georgia Cares, which funds victims of commercial sexual exploitation of children, the CSAC Task Force, which is the Commercial Sexual Exploitation of Children Task Force, the human trafficking study, forensic interviews and trainings, and it's also supported by the CJCC-administered Burn Justice Assistance Grant. If you go to 211.9, this is what's going to allow the transfer of funds for guardian ad litem training from the Governor's Office of Children and Families. The Federal Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act requires the appointment of a guardian ad litem, or GAL, to represent an abused or neglected child in all stages of a judicial proceeding. And this act also requires the GAL receive training, and that's what these funds would support. Are there any questions?
Okay. Senator, any questions? I don't think so. Yours is pretty straightforward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Department of Juvenile Justice. How you doing?
How you doing, sir?
Good, good, good. Thank you for being here.
We just want to take up the next hour to go over this presentation.
The next hour?
If that's okay.
You'll be speaking to these people out here.
But no, we wanted to thank you for starting your meeting off with prayer. That means a lot. It's not too often that you see a governed body start you off with prayer, so that's good. But one of the things that I wanted to do today, and so you've heard a lot of the issues that we have within juvenile justice, and we're trying to reshape the way that the agency is headed with the Governor Deal's budget and the House recommendation. Just want to take some time and talk just over a couple of those items. First, talk a little bit about what's in our juvenile justice $300 million budget. When you look at our 27 secure facilities, we run short-term facilities as well as our long-term, which is our YDCs and our RYDCs. For your information, the area that we need to focus on or guide you, or if you're not already there, on your booklet is Section 30, and start off with the 27 secure facilities. Some people may say, Niles, what do you have there in your facilities? Are we still having issues with our status offenders, or do we have a hardcore youth that's incarcerated there in our facilities? Ran a snapshot compared to what I presented to you all last a couple of weeks ago. You know, when you look at the facility, it's made up of 12 individuals that's charged with rape, 10 individuals that's charged with murder, some 40 plus youth that's charged with aggravated assault, some 36 charged with aggravated child molestation, 30 charged with sodomy, some 127 of our youth in this state charged with armed robbery. And then you have 27 that's charged with just child molestation, and then 2 of those individuals charged with incest. Today's population is some 77% that we have incarcerated. Somebody may say or ask the question, what is juvenile justice reform? Is that impacting your areas? We have ran studies from the first quarter, starting in October through the first quarter of this year. Some 400 youth, Senator, has decreased population coming into our facilities. And when I say decrease, that's the impact of the incentive grants that's already currently in place. To where you can say that 400 of those individuals that typically would have came straight to our doors, some 400 is out in the community getting the help that they deserve, getting the treatment, whether that's sexual assault, misconduct treatment, and/or some kinds of substance abuse treatment they receive in those substances. So juvenile justice reform is kicked off, and it is working. The incentive grants, and one of the things that we want to do that's outlined in our budget is that 212.4, I think that's on page 191, is the incentive grants for the upcoming year's budget, and that's a $1.6 million for the incentive grants, to where there are certain counties that we targeted last year with the $5 million of the governor's budget, and then $1.3 million in the federal grant that made up the incentive grants. There are so many counties, I think it's 104 counties, that particular $5 or $6 million did not touch. So the governor's budget this year, with the House recommendation also, we're looking at those counties. The further you get away from a metro city, the neglectfulness of services that's out there. And this particular $1.6 million will go for those particular counties. So next year, with the passage of this budget, every person or every area of the state will be covered so that they can have the same kind of opportunities just like your metro areas of this state. That's on the incentive grants. How do we get to those particular funds? Well, when you look at your bond packet, your capital packet, and that's at 357-145, where we want to look at the bond packet. You take some of those funds from the turnover, some of those funds of reinvestment of closure of facilities. When you look at the Paulding County facility that was closed on last year, December the 31st, some of that funding come. And then you see this year's recommendation is to bring Gwinnett County's RYDC offline. And those two areas will help fund that particular incentive grants, as well as, just like I presented on last time that we were together, with the high volume of turnover that we have with our JCOs, juvenile correction officers, to where those numbers just out the roof. And when you look at a Gwinnett County, to where it's the second largest county of committed youth, and then one of the largest counties of those individuals that commit us the most business, at risk, second largest at risk. And then you look at the percentage that they have, some 20% of lapse, to where it's a competitive market in the Gwinnett area for our employees to go to work. And they run, where the norm, 8% lapse, they constantly are at the 30%, 20 to 30% lapse factor. So when you look at the bond packet, where we want to have funds to go toward the renovation, the design and construction of our upcoming facilities, we're looking at the replacement of the Albany facility and opening up the Dawson and Terrell County facility. Somebody may say, well, how do you decide where to go to create more facilities? Well, our partners in corrections, whenever they decommission facilities, we look at those particular locations to see if they fit in our master schedule. And that's what we've done with these particular items, 341 or 357 all the way down to 147. And so when you look at that, that's exactly where we're going, and the direction in which the governor would have us to go, as well as the House approving of that areas. And sir, I will open up and ask you if you have any questions.
I've got just one. Whenever you have to close a facility, what are some of the main issues that you have with it when you have to close it? I mean, is it recurring? Is it something we can identify and maybe help correct? Or
It,
are they just all specific to those facilities?
It's specific to the facility, to where when you look at our first generation facilities that's built in the early 80s or in the 70s, when you look at what it is that we're trying to do, rehabilitate the kids, sometimes the linear type of facilities just don't work with the technology enhancement that you can actually put in there. It's so linear to where it's labor intensive. For instance, the Gwinnett County facility, it's a proven facility that's the first generation. I don't know if you have visited the Gwinnett County or any of the first style. The entrance is terrible. You don't have a processing where youth or the sheriff's office bring in those individuals that need to be in custody. That's outdated. It's very small. It's convoluted. The heating and air is terrible. The plumbing systems is not up to its standard. And when you look at what PREA, Prison Rape Elimination Act, calls for as it relates to the ratios and then the added protection for those kids that come in our care, we just have a duty to protect them.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Good
sir.
presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move along. Department of Public Safety. Colonel.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and member of the committee.
I don't want to leave it every Lone Ranger.
I'm on page 19, 253.4, increased funds for operation for life flight helicopters, $2,180,450. This is a partnership with the Southwest Regional Commission to be based out of Camilla, Georgia, to combine our existing law enforcement mission with providing access to trauma care through a life flight. The reason for this project is, if you look at Southwest Georgia, it's kind of an empty hole. Private contractors do not operate there because low population, and this is something that we can add to our existing capability and provide that service. If you have to go by ambulance and you've got to get to either Tallahassee or Dothan or a higher level trauma care from there, it's a long way. And the point of using helicopters is to stay within that 1 hour time frame in order to increase life expectancy from major injury. So that's what this is for, and it relates to what we've requested in our bond package. Next is page 22. This is line 256.4. It's an increased funds for operations for post 52 in Hart County. This is the annualization of what was added in amended 14. With those approval of funds, we're opening up a new post on I-85 in Northeast Georgia. There is not a post on the interstate system from Gwinnett County all the way to the South Carolina line. This is a section of the state that is growing and needs the presence of the troopers specifically on the interstate system. Another line down from that, 256.6, it's the increased funds for operations for Post 3 in Bartow County. Our plan is to reorganize Bartow County with a more rural county, and Paulding County, which is now partnering with them, which is the fastest growing county in the state, with a more rural county, Haralson County, and realign that, and that is the equivalent of 5 full-time equivalents, 5 additional troopers for that area. It's one of the busiest sections of the state. It's our number 2 most business area as far as accident investigation that the troopers do. And with that, those are the only things that we've got highlighted, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I've got a couple, Colonel. Why do you think that your department was chosen for the helicopters? I mean, it just seems strange. I mean,
Well, we have an aviation division, and that aviation division has the expertise and it has the maintenance experience to operate helicopters. Currently, we have 11 helicopters and 6 facilities around the state with 15 helicopter pilots. We're already in the aviation business doing that law enforcement function. This is modeled after what is done in Southwest Virginia by the Virginia State Police, where they've done a very similar thing, taking that capability of law enforcement flying, adapting the helicopters to do both. So in that rural section where the law enforcement capability is there, they can provide life flight if it's required.
will that be all they're used for?
Oh, absolutely not. Not life flight. Don't get keyed on that. There'll be that dual mission. So if the sheriff's in that area call, just like they always have, we'll have the FLIR capability to go and search at night, whether it's a lost Alzheimer patient or there's been an outbreak from a prison. If we have to support anybody that's in the field, if there's a chase, a natural disaster, any of the things that we do now, including firefighting, they will have that same capability. This is the added capability of Trauma Care Life Flight.
So these will be specifically in Southwest Georgia, though, these two?
Yes, sir.
What about the others? You said you have 15 others?
We have 15 pilots now, sir.
15 pilots, I mean helicopters.
Helicopters, we have 11. One of the helicopters is an existing helicopter that we already have. It's a new purchase from last year, and it'll be retrofitted to do this mission.
Okay, okay. Did any of the money for this come from the trauma fund?
I couldn't answer those questions, sir. I don't know.
Because you remember, that's what the super speeder was supposed to go for and everything.
Yes, sir.
That would seem appropriate to go right back into your department and,
I wouldn't argue with that line of thought.
Okay, the only other question I have, and this is just a question, okay? I'm struggling a little bit with Bartow County and your realignment, and we realign and we got to have 6 more officers? I thought realignment did the opposite.
Well, what we're trying to do is take a more urban county and align it with a rural county. We had a post in Cedartown that we moved out of. And Bartow County and Paulding County now have one post that services the area, and with that growth in Paulding County, we're growing beyond the work and the people that are there. So realigning Bartow County with Polk County and Paulding County with Haralson County, we're able to realign them and then only request 5 additional folks to be able to handle the work that's there.
Okay. Senator Miller?
Thank you, Colonel. My questions also go to the helicopters as well. Trauma patients, when we fly a helicopter to pick up a trauma patient, who foots that bill?
With this, there'll be no bill from the state, but with the partnership that would occur with the Southwest Regional Commission, they will provide the flight nurses to this partnership, and they'll have the ability to have a billing mechanism. The Department of Public Safety doesn't have a mechanism which we charge for our services, as you know. But with that agreement, the Regional Commission would be able to do that.
There's if you carry someone, transport them by ambulance, are they qualified for Medicaid?
In that area, that's predominantly how things are paid. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why private carriers are not in there, is that billing mechanism for flight travel, for air flight travel, is not what they can access. So the private companies don't see that as an area where they can make money just because of that issue.
So you can't charge, Medicaid won't pick up any of a flight?
Right now, they will not.
And you say right now, is there some change in that we're anticipating?
Folks are working on that, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I got a couple more questions.
Yes, sir.
Switching gears for a little bit, getting off the helicopters, you mentioned a post in northeast Georgia on 85.
Yes, sir.
Now, is that, where is that in here? Is that, where do we find that?
Page 22, sir, line 256.4.
Page 27 for us.
Right. So that's where I had it, but so the post is going to be in Hart County, or it's going to move it, or?
It's going to be in Hart County. It's the establishment of a new facility and 14 troopers additional for that area.
Refresh my geography. How close is Hart County to the South Carolina line?
Right on the border, just like Valdosta, just like Grovetown, just like Villa Rica. It's appropriate to have a post right there on the state lines and to be able to work that from the state line in.
Or to keep those people from South Carolina out of here.
It's a rough crowd in Anderson, sir.
It is.
Yes, sir. It is.
I agree.
It is.
So that's a standard procedure to have it on the state line
It is, sir, and on the interstate.
rather than having it in a few miles.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay. Colonel, thank you, and thank you for your work and your department's work over the past few weeks and the past month and
I am
during all
not
these
a
times.
meteorologist.
Especially to echo what we talked about earlier with the guard.
Yes,
Sure.
Especially.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jima,
Next.
no changes? Good, we got plenty of money now. All right, Georgia Drugs and Narcotics. Dennis? They didn't have any changes anyway, so that's fine. Yeah, that's true.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman and Senator, for allowing us to come. First thing is apology for Rick Allen. He is at the pharmacy board meeting, so he is the man to usually do this for us.
That's his story, and we're going to stick to it.
Yeah, he said, Dennis, be there. So here I am. The three items that we have on our the budget for next year was the two items put in from the governor's recommendation of the change to the retirement system, the $29,000, the $11,000 for the increase in the merit-based pay adjustments and employee recruitment retention, and the last item that was a House recommendation was the increased funds for personnel for additional inspector in our office. And as I know Senator Carter knows, and you do as well, I'm sure, Senator, we're the enforcement and investigative branch for the Board of Pharmacy primarily, but over the past few years, from I believe it was 2008, we have come down from 14 investigators to 10 investigators. During that time, we were 2011, we started registering technicians in the state of Georgia for pharmacies, and they were not, well, that added an additional 20,000 persons with registrations through the Board of Pharmacy that became many investigations that we took on that increased that. I think in the last year, we've also, the last 3 to 4 years, as y'all know, there's a lot of publicity about prescription drug abuse and how that's an epidemic in this country, and certainly our agency is deeply involved with pharmacies and with education to law enforcement, to education to other parts of the population, that we do training and we do teaching for that. We've since taken on, 2 years ago, the prescription drug monitoring. We are the administrating agency for that, and that has required at least 50% of a full-time agent's time, as well as office staff time to do that, and that's kind of the basis for asking for that additional investigator.
Okay. Anything else?
No, sir.
Any questions?
I would defer to the chairman on this one.
No, that's fine. I'm glad the House put that position in there. It's much needed, particularly with what you stated, with us licensing pharmacy techs now, prescription drug monitoring bills, the prescription drug monitoring program. All of those things have added to an increased workload for that department, who I feel like have done an outstanding job with what has been added to your workload.
Well, thank you, sir. And just to give you an idea, from in 2000, the FY11 of investigations of registrants for the Board of Pharmacy increased from 11 to 12, 20%, and from 12 to 13 by 38%
Right.
of investigations.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else here who wants to speak on anything? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you.